I was sitting in a crowded cafe in Seoul recently, and at the table next to me, there was a man in his early 40s who looked like your typical salaryman, crisp white shirt, expensive watch. But instead of reviewing quarterly reports, he was obsessively refreshing a YouTube studio dashboard on his phone. There was a frantic, almost religious intensity in his eyes. When I asked him what he was looking at, he didn't talk about passion or creativity. He talked about the number. He told me that in South Korea right now, the average YouTuber is pulling in about $49,000 a year. To him, that figure, a 25% jump in just 4 years, was the ultimate proof that the old corporate ladder was dead. He spoke about the martial law declaration back in December 2024, not as a moment of political instability, but as a growth pivot that sent his political commentary channel into overdrive. He was convinced he was part of a new elite, riding a wave of digital prosperity that was lifting everyone's boat. But then he scrolled down to a private creator forum on his screen, and the vibe changed instantly. The comments were filled with desperation. While he was chasing the average, he showed me posts from creators in the bottom 50% who were barely clearing 24 million won, hardly enough to cover a month's rent and groceries in a city as expensive as Seoul. It was a staggering disconnect. On one side of the screen, you have the top 1%, a tiny group of about 348 people who are bringing home an average of 1.29 billion won each, living lives that look like high-budget K-dramas. On the other side, you have tens of thousands of people fighting for crumbs in an increasingly saturated market. The man in the cafe was middle-aged, the demographic currently making the most money in this space, yet even he seemed haunted by the fear of falling into that bottom bracket. That sudden shift from the gold rush euphoria to the grim reality of income polarization is what defines the modern Korean creator economy. It makes you wonder, when we see these headlines about skyrocketing earnings, are we looking at a flourishing new middle class or a winner-take-all lottery where the entry fee is your entire life?
That image, of the man in the cafe, it's the perfect encapsulation of this whole thing.
Right. It's the collision of the dream and the reality right there on one phone screen.
Exactly. It's where the mythology of the creator economy just smashes headfirst into the hard sociology of South Korea. We're sold this idea of liberation, of breaking free from old hierarchies.
Escaping the 9-to-5.
Yes. But what we're actually looking at is a system that has, well, in effect, it's just digitized them. It's recreated the old problems in a new space.
And that man, the one in the white shirt, he genuinely believes he's exiting the rat race.
He does. But the data, all the data we're looking at, it suggests he's entering a different kind of gladiator arena. One that might be even more ruthless.
It's the digital chaebol effect, which is what we really want to dig into. We hear chaebol and you think of Samsung, Hyundai, LG, these, enormous family-run industrial giants that basically control the entire Korean economy.
They suck all the oxygen out of the room.
But then you look at the wealth distribution on YouTube in Korea, and the architecture is identical. It's the same shape.
It's a mirror.
And to show just how crushing this parallel is, I want to tell you about someone I met, a guy named Minho.
Okay.
So I went to visit him where he lives, and, well, living space is a very generous term for it. He's in a Goshuwon, right in the shadow of the Gangnam Finance District.
For anyone who doesn't know what Goshuwon is, it's incredibly small.
It's a box. Imagine a cubicle with a door, maybe 5 square meters.
Yeah.
You can literally touch both walls at the same time without even stretching your arms all the way.
Not a lot of room to live.
No,
Yeah.
and the air inside was it was thick with the smell of instant ramen and that kind of ozone-y heat that you get from computer hardware that's been running way too long.
Right. Overworked.
But Minho himself, he's smart, he's articulate, but he's just bone tired. You can see it in his eyes. He spent 3 years trying to get into what he called the gold circle, the top-tier conglomerates.
Like cables.
The cables. He did everything right. The internships, he got all the right certifications. He spent months, years studying for the corporate entrance exams. But the gates they were triple locked.
And this is a key piece of context that I think people outside of Korea often miss. The corporate ladder isn't just steep anymore. For, 90% of the population, the bottom rungs have been sawed off. They're just gone. The acceptance rates for those big company jobs are statistically lower than getting into an Ivy League university.
Exactly. So Minho did what thousands of others are doing. He pivoted. And he told me something that has stuck with me ever since. He said he viewed the YouTube algorithm as a fairer god than a corporate HR director.
Wow.
Yeah. His logic was, a computer doesn't care about your family background. It doesn't care which university you scraped into. All it cares about are the metrics. Retention rates, click-throughs, watch time.
Pure unbiased data, or so he thinks.
Or so he thinks. So he went all in, became a full-time gaming streamer, and I watched him work. He sits in that tiny windowless box for 16 hours a day. 16.
It's unsustainable.
He's broadcasting to an audience that, it fluctuates. Sometimes it's 10 people. On a good night, maybe 50. And he lives exclusively on convenience store food, ramen, kimbap triangles, because he just can't afford the time or the money to actually cook a meal.
He's burning his own life as fuel for the channel.
He's chasing that top 1% dream.
Yeah.
He's absolutely convinced that one viral clip, just one, will be the thing that catapults him out of this poverty. But the reality is, he's just traded a human boss for an algorithmic one.
And the new boss is much crueler.
It offers zero benefits, no sick days, no severance package, and absolutely no safety net. He's living in this state of complete, total precarity. Yet he feels like he has no other choice because the traditional economy has already told him no.
The door is closed.
The door is closed. And the irony was it was suffocating. He escaped the corporate hierarchy only to find himself at the very bottom of a digital version of the exact same system.
Minho's story is the perfect case study for what I call the average fallacy. It's the first thing we have to dismantle. You mentioned that headline number from the man in the cafe.
$49,000, or about 70 million won.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, in a healthy economy, an average actually tells you something useful. It represents a typical experience. If the average height of a man is 5'9", most men you meet are going to be somewhere around 5'9".
Right, it's a bell curve. Most people are in the middle.
But in a power law economy, which is what the platform economy is, the average is. It's a mathematical fiction. It does nothing but hide the suffering of the vast majority.
It's that old joke, right? If Bill Gates walks into a bar with 10 other people, the average net worth of everyone in that bar suddenly becomes $1 billion.
Yes. But nobody else in the bar got any richer. In fact, they're probably more aware of how poor they are. And that's exactly what's happening here. Let's look at the actual tax data. This is from the 2024 filings reported in early 2026, so it's fresh. And it is startling.
Okay.
The top 1% of creators in South Korea, that's just 348 people.
Out of how many total?
Out of nearly 35,000 registered active businesses, so a tiny fraction.
Okay.
Those 348 individuals earned a combined 450.1 billion won.
That's a staggering number.
And what's more, the concentration of wealth at the very, very top is accelerating. It's getting worse, not better. Since 2020, the average earnings for this top 1% have jumped by 70%.
70% in 4 years.
Yes. They are now pulling in, on average, 1.29 billion won each per year.
Which is, what is that in US dollars?
Nearly $970,000 each. They're not just succeeding, they're basically detaching from the rest of the Korean economy entirely. They live in a different world.
And then you have the Minhos of the world, the other side of that number.
The other side, the bottom 50%. And remember, these aren't just hobbyists. These are people who have officially registered as a business with the government. Yeah. They're trying to make this their job.
They're the ones in the trenches.
That's over 17,000 creators, more than 17,000 people. Their average annual income is just 24.63 million won.
Which is about 18,400 US dollars.
$18,000.
Oh. That's poverty. You cannot live a dignified life on that. That barely covers your gashi-won rent and your instant ramen.
It's less than the legal minimum wage for a full-time job. So for half the people in this supposed dream industry, it's a poverty trap that's been cleverly disguised as entrepreneurship.
Wow.
The gap between $970,000 and $18,000, that is the defining feature of this entire system. It's not a bell curve. It's a hockey stick, a sheer cliff face.
And that brings us right back to your digital K-ball analogy, because it sounds like the algorithm itself is designed to create this outcome.
The mechanism reinforces it. It's a winner-takes-all engine by its very nature. If a channel already has high engagement, the algorithm shows it to more people.
Which generates even more engagement.
Which then pushes it out even further.
Yeah.
It's a positive feedback loop that naturally, mathematically, creates monopolies of attention. It's designed to find the winners and give them everything.
So in the same way that Samsung can use its massive capital to dominate supply chains and just crush smaller competitors, a top-tier YouTuber uses their algorithmic advantage to dominate the recommended videos. Sidebar, they become inescapable.
And that's not the only advantage. They also have the capital to reinvest in their channels. This is the other piece of the puzzle that just completely destroys the egalitarian myth.
The idea that it's just a kid with a webcam in their bedroom.
That image is so outdated. It's a fantasy. When you look at the demographic data, it's really revealing. The highest earning demographic isn't teenagers or people in their 20s, it's people in their 40s.
That really surprised me when I saw that. I just assumed it would be the Gen Z digital natives who grew up with this stuff.
No. The 40-something creators are earning an average of $65,000. The creators under 30, they're down around $54,000.
So why is that? What's the advantage of being older?
Well, a couple things. First, production value matters now more than ever. To compete at the top, you can't just use your phone. You need 4K cameras, professional lighting, high-quality microphones, maybe a team of editors.
And all of that costs money. Serious money.
It requires upfront capital. A 40-year-old who's had a previous career probably has some savings. They might have a line of credit. A 25-year-old like Minho, living in a Gashuan, has nothing.
He's starting from so far behind.
And it's not just equipment. The 40-year-old often brings professional expertise to the table. They might be a lawyer, or a real estate agent, a financial advisor.
Content that advertisers will pay a premium for.
Exactly. The ad rates, the CPM for a finance channel are 10, 20 times higher than for a gaming channel or a daily vlog. So the gold circle of YouTube has become professionalized. It's not an amateur's game anymore. It's a business where capital begets capital.
There's also a darker element to how some of this wealth was generated recently. The man in the cafe, he mentioned the martial law declaration.
December 2024.
Yeah. I mean, that was a genuinely terrifying moment for South Korea, real constitutional crisis.
Right.
But he didn't talk about it that way. He called it a growth pivot.
That is a deeply cynical, but unfortunately a very accurate observation.
So
during periods of intense political instability or crisis, a couple of things happen. Mainstream media often lags behind events, or it's perceived as being too cautious, and a lot of people just flat out don't trust it.
they want raw, unfiltered information.
And in December 2024, that's where YouTube came in. Traffic surged toward independent political commentary channels. These creators could broadcast from their desks in real time. No editors, no corporate oversight, just raw analysis and opinion.
So the martial law pivot, as he called it, was essentially monetizing a national anxiety attack.
It was turning a constitutional crisis into a revenue stream. That's exactly what it was.
That's grim.
The channels that could pump out the most content, the most rapidly, with the most sensational, most outrageous framing, they saw their viewership and their earnings spike dramatically.
It rewards hyperreactivity.
And outrage. If you were a top political commentator in Korea, that month was probably your single biggest payday of the entire year. It just reinforces this idea that the creator economy doesn't thrive on stability. Stability is boring. Crisis is profitable.
So what we have is this massive accelerating concentration of wealth. It's driven by algorithms that favor monopolies, and it's supercharged by moments of national panic, and it's all funneling money to a tiny, tiny elite.
Picture.
Which naturally brings us to the entity that's supposed to be the referee in all this, the government. Specifically the National Tax Service.
The NTS.
But from everything we found, the NTS isn't just losing this fight. It's like they've shown up to a gunfight with a knife.
Or maybe a ledger book to a fiber optic race. The sheer speed of the creator economy has completely and utterly outpaced the regulatory framework. It's not even a fair fight.
And I want to bring in another perspective here, because it's one thing to talk about it in the abstract. I spent some time looking into the situation at the NTS headquarters in Sejong City, and specifically the experience of an auditor, we'll call her G1, and she describes a level of bureaucratic nightmare that is it's hard to convey. You have to picture this massive gray government office. It's filled with overworked civil servants staring at spreadsheets, trying to track money that moves at the speed of light across borders.
An impossible task.
She talked about the exhaustion of chasing what she calls ghost income. She's trying to audit a single creator who might have 5, 6, 7 different revenue streams, and none of them touch a traditional Korean bank account in a way that's easy to track.
They're designed not to.
Exactly. She explained how creators are splitting their earnings across all these decentralized platforms, or they're hiding sponsorships inside what they call gift economies, which just look like personal money transfers from a friend. And you have to remember, for decades, the South Korean state had this legendary iron grip on the flow of capital. This is a country that industrialized through state-directed finance. They knew where every single one was going.
That control was central to their economic model.
And Ji-won's experience suggests that there's a massive crack forming in that control. She says she feels like she's trying to catch smoke with her bare hands. All of a sudden, there are 34,000 new media businesses, and many of them are operating with the financial sophistication of an offshore shell company.
The old world order of rigid, centralized East Asian state control versus the decentralized, borderless Wild West of the creator economy.
My big takeaway from her story was that this isn't just about a few rich people dodging taxes. It's about the potential dissolution of the social contract. If the state can't see the money, it can't tax it. And if it can't tax the biggest winners, that burden falls even heavier on everyone else.
G1 is on the front lines of what we call regulatory lag. But in this specific sector, it's not just lag. It's being actively exacerbated by the very technology of how money moves now.
So let's break down these blind spots that she's talking about. Where is the ghost income hiding?
Okay, so the first and most obvious one is the donation economy.
Right. On FreeTV, they're called star balloons. On YouTube, they're super chats.
Exactly. And culturally, these are framed very carefully. They're called gifts or support from a fan. That language creates this psychological distance from commerce. It doesn't feel like you're buying a product.
You're supporting an artist.
Right. But legally, under the tax code, it is 100% taxable business income. There's no gray area. The problem is, because these platforms often use third-party payment processors or even peer-to-peer transfers, the money can sometimes slip past the automatic reporting thresholds that would apply to a standard corporate bank transfer.
It's harder to see.
This is the real headache for the NTS. For YouTube, the bulk of the ad revenue, the AdSense payments, they don't originate in Korea. They're wired from Google Asia Pacific, which is headquartered in Singapore.
So it's a foreign wire transfer coming into the country.
Correct. And the NTS does track foreign transfers. There's a specific reporting threshold. The Bank of Korea and the NTS have automatic reporting triggers for any single transaction over $10,000 US.
$10,000.
It's one of the oldest tricks in the money laundering playbook. It's called smurfing.
Smurfing.
Yes. If a top creator is due a payment of, say, $25,000 for the month, they don't take it in one lump sum that would trigger an automatic report. They structure the payments.
They break it up.
They break it up.
Yeah.
They might arrange for 3 separate payments of $8,000, $8,000, and $9,000, none of which hits the $10,000 mark. Or, and this is even more common, they use what are called borrowed names.
So funneling the money through their mom's bank account?
Mom, dad, their cousin, the trusted friend. They split the incoming cash flow across 5 different bank accounts held by 5 different people. They keep each individual account well below the audit radar.
So to Ji-won, the auditor at the NTS, when she looks at her screen, it just looks like a bunch of small, totally unrelated personal transfers from overseas. Exactly.
It requires a huge amount of manpower and investigation to connect all those dots and prove that all those disparate accounts are actually funneling money to one single creator.
That's not just being sloppy with your accounting. That's active strategic tax evasion. It's a criminal enterprise structure.
Yes. And that's why the government crackdown, when it happens, has been so aggressive, but also so targeted, they can't go after everyone.
They don't have the resources.
No. So they make examples of the biggest offenders. Between 2019 and 2024, the NTS conducted these incredibly deep audits on just 67 high-profile creators.
67? That's a tiny number.
But look at what they found. 23.6 billion won in unpaid taxes.
That's about 17.1 million US dollars.
From just 67 people.
So that averages out to what, over $250,000 of hidden tax liability per person? These are not small fish.
No, these are the whales. And the government is putting their names in the newspapers.
Yeah.
This connects directly to the phenomenon of the cyber wreckers.
Cyber wreckers. The Korean term is rekka.
Rekka, yeah.
They're basically the tow trucks of the internet. They race to the scene of a car accident, they find a celebrity scandal, a political rumor, any kind of drama, and they just blow it up for views and clicks.
They literally monetize the destruction of other people's reputations. They spread misinformation, they incite online harassment campaigns, because that is what drives the highest engagement. Outrage is the product.
And public sentiment against them has become incredibly toxic.
It's curdled. You have to imagine the average Korean salaryman. Their taxes are deducted automatically from their paycheck every month down to the last one, they have zero ability to hide anything.
And they're watching these cyber wreckers drive around in Lamborghinis, ruin people's lives, and pay zero taxes on top of it all.
It's a double injustice. They see people who are morally bankrupt also bankrupting the state.
So the tax audit becomes a moral weapon for the government.
It's the perfect tool. The public cheers when the NTS raids a cyber wrecker.
It's an
Al Capone's strategy, right? If you can't get them for the defamation or the harassment because the laws are too slow or too weak, you get them for the taxes.
But there's a really weird contradiction here, isn't there? Because on the one hand, the NTS is hunting them down like criminals. But on the other hand, isn't the government also actively incentivizing this entire industry?
This is the complete schizophrenia of government policy in this area. It's working at cross purposes. Legally, all these creators are classified as business operators.
Right.
And the government is absolutely desperate to solve the youth unemployment crisis. It's a massive political issue. So they've created tax codes specifically for young entrepreneurs starting new businesses in certain designated zones outside of Seoul that offer up to a 100% income tax exemption for the first 5 years.
So you're telling me if I'm a 25-year-old cyber wrecker and I register my business address in some special growth city just outside the capital, I could technically be tax exempt?
In theory, yes, you can be legally avoiding the very taxes that the NTS is trying to audit you for evading, provided you file all the right paperwork. It's a complete mess.
So they're subsidizing the fire and also paying the firefighters.
The government wants the creator economy to be a solution to joblessness, so they throw subsidies at it.
Yeah.
But they are terrified of it becoming a black hole for tax revenue, so they police it aggressively. They want it both ways.
And this brings us to the structure of the business itself. You mentioned MCNs earlier, multi-channel networks. These are the big talent agencies, right? Like the SM Entertainment, but for YouTubers.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that for the very top earners, the MCNs are actually becoming less popular.
That. You'd think professional management would be a good thing.
It is, if you want to be legitimate. If you sign with an MCN, they handle all your billing, your sponsorships, your counting. They take their cut, of course, usually 20 to 30%.
But they also report all your income to the government.
They report everything. You're legitimized, but you're also completely exposed from a tax perspective. There's nowhere to hide.
So the smart money, or at least the money that wants to stay hidden, is actually avoiding the professional agencies.
For those who want to maximize their take-home pay and minimize their tax burden, yes. The trend among the top 1% is away from the MCNs and toward what they call the solopreneur model.
Do it all yourself.
These top creators are looking at the numbers and thinking, why should I pay an agency 20% of my income just so they can help the government take another 40%? I can hire a freelance editor for cheap. I'll take my payments directly from Google Singapore, and I'll handle my own accounting through my cousin's bank account.
It's a deliberate shift away from institutionalization and back into the shadows.
Back to the Wild West.
This entire system sounds incredibly stressful. I mean, you've got the crushing precarity of the algorithm, this constant cat and mouse game with the tax man, the public hating you if you're one of these wreckers. Why are tens of thousands of people like Minho literally rushing into this burning building?
To understand the why, I think we have to move beyond the economics and the tax code and really look at the sociology of modern South Korea. We have to understand the concept of Hyeosan.
It's a phrase that has, in many ways, defined a generation. And I want to introduce you to one more person, Seo-yeon, because her story explains this better than any academic paper ever could.
Okay.
I met Seo-yeon at a shared workspace in Seongsu-dong, a trendy part of Seoul. She's in her late 20s, impeccably dressed, speaks perfect English, has the kind of resume that any parent would brag about. She had a prestigious job, a great salary, a fancy title, the whole package.
She was in the gold circle?
She was, mid-sized firm in Gangnam, but she quit. She just walked away from all of it.
To do what?
To start a slow life vlog. She makes these quiet, aesthetic videos of her, making pour-over coffee, organizing her desk, sometimes just staring at the window at the rain.
And she's aware of the odds.
Completely.
Yeah.
She knows the statistics inside and out. She knows she is overwhelmingly likely to end up in that bottom 50%, earning less than minimum wage. But when I asked her why she did it, she used the word suffocation. She described the rigid, top-down hierarchy of the Korean office. The mandatory late-night drinking sessions, the hwaeshik, the feeling that her entire life was a pre-written script, a tunnel with no exits.
The golden cage.
And she told me that even if she only makes $24 million a year, a tiny fraction of her old salary, She feels like she has reclaimed her soul from the hell-Usion grind. It was an incredible, almost desperate reframing of poverty. She is consciously choosing financial precarity just to escape social suffocation. When I looked at her, I didn't see an aspiring influencer or celebrity. I saw a refugee. She's fleeing a system that she feels is fundamentally designed to crush her spirit. And she's building a ladder out of pixels because all the real-world ladders have been pulled up.
Seo-yeon is a perfect example of what sociologists are calling tall Joe.
Escape Joseon.
Escape Joseon. Historically, that term meant physical emigration. You studied like crazy to get a visa to go to Canada or Australia or the United States. You physically left the Korean peninsula.
But now you don't need a passport to escape. You just need a webcam.
Precisely. It's become a form of digital emigration. And that term, Helljoseon, is so crucial here. Joseon refers to the old feudal dynasty of Korea. It was a rigid caste system where your birth determined your entire life.
And the youth are using that term to describe modern Korea.
Because they feel that social mobility is frozen over. They talk about the spoon class theory.
Gold spoons, silver spoons, and dirt spoons.
Right. If you're born a dirt spoon, they believe that no amount of hard work in a traditional company will ever make you a gold spoon. The system is rigged from the start.
Because the gold spoons get the right internships through family connections, they have the family money for tutoring, they get the real estate inheritance that sets them up for life.
The game is over before it begins. So in that context, the creator economy is viewed as the only place left where a dirt spoon might magically turn into gold. It's the national lottery. Seo-yeon is making a rational bet, in a way. She's betting that her slow life aesthetic will catch the algorithm's eye and she'll win.
It's a rational response to what feels like an irrational, unfair structural problem. If the main game is rigged, you stop playing and you go find a new game. But the tragedy, which we've already touched on, is that this new game is also rigged, and it has a very, very dark underbelly. Seo-yeon is making these wholesome, aesthetic vlogs, but that's not where the fast money is.
No.
The fast money is in the world of the BJs. The broadcast jockeys.
This is where the raw desperation of Helljoseon collides with the brutal exploitation of the digital K-ball model. BJs, they mostly operate on live streaming platforms like a Freaky TV. And unlike YouTube, where most of the revenue comes from ads placed by corporations, BJ revenue comes almost entirely from direct donations from viewers, those star balloons, in real time.
It creates this intense, immediate feedback loop. Do this specific thing right now, and I will give you $100.
And that dynamic creates an enormous pressure for the monetization of intimacy, and increasingly the monetization of the body. We are seeing female BJs in particular being pushed into more and more provocative, sometimes dangerous content just to solicit these balloons.
It becomes a race to the bottom to see who is willing to do the most for the biggest donations.
And you have these high-profile cases that set a terrible precedent. Look at BJ Sean. She was already quite popular, but then she was photographed in Los Angeles with Bang Si-hook, the chairman of HYBE, the agency behind BTS.
A huge story.
Her notoriety just exploded. In the days following that scandal, or really just that exposure, her earnings from star balloons reportedly hit 16.5 million won in a single day.
That sends a horrifying message to every other struggling creator out there. The message is, get famous, get controversial, do something scandalous, and you will get rich overnight.
And then you have to look at the other side of that transaction. The people sending the money. The big spenders. The so-called chairman of the chat rooms.
Who are these guys? Are they all just millionaires with money to burn?
Some of them are, but often they're not. They are lonely, isolated men who are, in their own way, also victims of Helljoseon. They lack status and connection in the real world.
And they're seeking it online.
They're buying it. In the chat room, if you donate the most money, you become the king. The BJ says your name over and over. She thanks you personally. She blows you a kiss. For that moment, you have power. You have status.
It creates this false, temporary hierarchy where you can purchase the respect and admiration that you don't get in your real life.
And we have documented cases of men going into massive, crippling debt to maintain this illusion. There was an incredibly tragic case of a man who took his own life after accumulating insurmountable debt just from supporting a BJ. He was borrowing money from loan sharks to keep up the facade of being a chairman online.
That's horrifying.
It's a shared delusion.
Yeah.
The creators performing intimacy, the viewers performing wealth, and the platform is sitting in the middle, extracting real cash from both of their desperations.
And of course, where there's that much desperate cash flowing around with little oversight, organized crime is going to follow.
Inevitably. The cyber wrecker world and the BJ world are increasingly being linked to what are now called enterprise gangs. These aren't the old-school gangsters with tattoos holding baseball bats on a street corner.
They're digital operators.
They're sitting behind keyboards. And they use star balloons for money laundering. Think about that. You have a pile of dirty cash from some other illicit activity. You give that cash to a network of viewers. Those viewers buy star balloons. They donate them to a BJ who is secretly managed by your gang. The platform takes its cut, the BJ takes her cut, and the rest comes back to your agency as clean, legitimate business income.
So what looks like an innocent live stream is actually a wash cycle for criminal proceeds.
In some of the more extreme cases, yes. And we're also seeing more and more reports of coercion. Agencies that are really fronts for gangs, forcing creators to stream for dangerously long hours, dictating their content, and taking predatory 80 or 90% cuts of their earnings. It's a form of digital indentured servitude.
So this is the grim reality of the escape. So Yuan wants to escape the corporate grind of Hell Joseon, but if she's not careful, she could fall into a system that is far more abusive, far more exploitative, and has zero labor laws to protect her.
That is the perfect synthesis of everything we've been talking about. The creator economy, at least in the South Korean context, isn't some separate utopic economy that exists outside the old world. It is a mirror. It reflects South Korea's existing deep-seated problems, the hyper-competition, the rigid hierarchy, the extreme polarization of wealth, the commodification of human life, and it just accelerates them with technology. We haven't fixed the Hale Joseon dynamic at all. We've just uploaded it to the cloud.
It really forces you to rethink the whole narrative we're sold about technology. We're told that technology disrupts old power structures, that it democratizes opportunity. But in this case, technology seems to be the most efficient machine for concentrating inequality that we've ever invented.
It strongly suggests that without fundamental structural changes in the real world, in the labor market, in housing costs, and social safety nets, the digital world will just keep replicating the exact same power laws. The algorithm isn't a savior, it's just a multiplier for whatever social dynamics already exist.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ground here. We started with that man in the cafe staring at his phone, just hoping for some kind of salvation in a number, that average salary. We've seen how that number is a complete fiction for 99% of the people in the system. We've seen the tax authorities struggling to even map this new financial terrain, and we've seen the very real human Cost Minho in his box. Seo Yan trading her salary for her soul, and the tragic, dark cycle of the live streaming world.
It's a very sobering look at what happens when an entire society starts to lose faith in its traditional paths to success. What?
We often talk about the creator economy as the future of work, as this great liberation from the 9-to-5 grind. But when you look at the hard data from Seoul, it looks less like liberation and a lot more like we've simply digitized the lottery. We've built this system where 348 people live like modern royalty, while over 17,000 people fight for scraps, and the entire thing is fueled by the desperate hope that the algorithm might, for just one moment, look their way. It suggests that without fixing the real-world structures that make people so desperate to escape in the first place, the digital world will just keep replicating the exact same hell we are all trying to run away from.
A digitized lottery is a very long shot.
Thanks for listening.